Imagine waiting 38 years for your life to start. 38 years watching other people move forward. 38 years watching other people get their breakthrough. And every time the water moved, you were just a few seconds too late. But what if breakthrough has been standing in front of you for years and you've been looking at the wrong thing? What if the reason nothing has changed is not because God didn't move, but because you were staring at the pool while Jesus was standing beside you? Because sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't delay, it's misdirection. But before we finish today, I'm going to show you two real stories from history of people who waited decades for their breakthrough, but everything changed the moment that they finally stood up. John 5 introduces us to a place called Bethesda. It was a pool surrounded by 5 coverings, and it was full of suffering people, blind, lame, paralyzed, all of them waiting for the same thing, the one moment, the stirring of the water, because the belief was that when the water moved, the first person in would be healed. So imagine the desperation, the wrestle, the fight. Every time the water moved, people scrambled, they rushed, they fought to be first. And in the middle of that chaos, there was one man, a man who had been crippled for 38 years. But here is the detail most people miss in this story. The real miracle of John 5 is not the healing itself. The real miracle is the moment the man stops identifying with this problem. And that is the moment we're about to look at. Before we continue the Bible story here, let me tell you about someone who understood this moment. Her name was Harriet Tubman. She was born into slavery in the early 1800s. For years, she lived under oppression, getting beat, forced labor, no control over her life. And like many enslaved people, she dreamed about freedom. But dreams alone didn't change her situation. Yet one night she made the decision. She got sick and tired of being sick and tired and stuck. She stopped waiting for someone else to free her, and she escaped. She walked nearly 90 miles to freedom, but here's the most remarkable part. She didn't just stay free, she went back over and over again. And historians estimate she helped free around 70 people through the Underground Railroad. She carried people to freedom because she was once the one waiting for someone to carry her. That is the same shift we see in John 5. This man had spent decades waiting for someone else to carry him, and then Jesus showed up. John 5:6 says, when Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he had already been there a long time. Jesus knew. Jesus knows what you are going through. He knew the years. He knew the pain. He knew the disappointment. And then Jesus asked a question that some might feel like sound offensive. Do you want to even be made well? And the man answer revealed something shocking. He doesn't actually answer the question. Instead, he gives an excuse. The man says, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool." In other words, he's saying, I've tried. No one helped me. Other people get there first. My situation is different. I am the victim. My circumstances are hard. Now listen carefully. This isn't just a story about a crippled man. This is a story about human nature, about getting stuck in the victim mentality. Because when we stay stuck long enough, we build explanations for our situation. But eventually, those explanations become our reality. And neuroscience actually confirms this. Your brain is wired to prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar change, which means the hardest part of healing is often leaving the identity that came with the wound in the first place. When we stay stuck long enough, we start building explanations. This is just how I am. This is always the struggle that I've had and I'll carry. Nothing ever works out for me. I'm just not disciplined. I'm just anxious. I'm just bad with money. But here's the neuroscience shows that your brain believes what you repeatedly tell it. Every time you repeat a label, you're reinforcing neural pathways. And eventually what started as an exclamation or a story told over you becomes your identity. And identities drive behavior. If I believe I'm broken, I'll act broken. If I believe I'm overlooked, I'll live overlooked. If I believe I'm always behind, I'll start trying to run. And here is the danger. If you're not careful, your trauma doesn't just become something that happened to you, it becomes who you think that you are. And Jesus refuses to heal the body without confronting the identity first. That is why he asked, do you want to be made well? Let me give you another real life example here. Nelson Mandela. Mandela spent 27 years in prison, 27 years behind bars. Most people would have left prison bitter, angry, ready for revenge, but Mandela did something different. When he walked out of prison, he carried something different with him: vision, reconciliation, leadership, and just a few years later, he became the president of South Africa. The same prison that once held him became part of the story he carried. And in a moment, I am going to show you why Jesus telling him to carry his bed was actually the most controversial part of this miracle. See, Jesus says three things: rise, take up your bed, and walk. Notice the order. Jesus doesn't say, let's get you into the pool. He bypasses the entire system the man has trusted, because the miracle was never in the pool. The miracle was standing right in front of him in the person that is Jesus. And what Jesus says next is one of the most powerful identity shifting scriptures. Stop waiting for someone else. You see, for 38 years, this man believed his miracle was in the system. The pool, the timing, the stirring, the race. He believed if he could just get into the right environment at the right moment before everyone else, then he would be made whole. But Jesus never touched the water. He doesn't stir it. He doesn't improve it. He doesn't help the man into it. He bypasses it, because the miracle was never in the system. The miracle was in the Savior. You've been waiting on a system, and God has sent you a Savior. You've been waiting for the right opportunity, and God has sent you his voice. You've been waiting for conditions to change, and God is asking you to stand up, friend. I remember a season in my life when someone I trusted deeply betrayed me. This wasn't casual friendship. This was my best friend. We had built plans together. We had served alongside each other. We shared vision. We had those deep conversations about where we believed God was taking us. Then I found out that they were living a double life, hurting the people that was close to me and those that I was called to help and lead. And I remember sitting in my car after I found out, hands on the steering wheel, just staring straight ahead. I wasn't angry. I was just disappointed. For a while, I thought the distance in our friendship was my fault, like I had done something. I was replaying conversations, wondering what I missed, wondering if I had done something wrong. But over time, I realized something, that God had been creating distance before the fallout ever became public. What I thought was rejection was actually God's protection. And here was the lie that started forming in my head: you can't trust anyone. People always leave. You're better off alone. And the dangerous part wasn't the betrayal. It was the identity I started building around it. I stopped opening up. I kept conversations surface level. I turned down collaboration opportunities. I started double checking motives. I told myself I was being wise, but really I was lying on the mat. Because when hurt becomes identity, you start organizing your life around self-protection. And my get up moment wasn't emotional, it was practical. It looked like choosing to trust again, choosing to build again, choosing not to rehearse the story of what they did. It meant forgiving privately before I felt ready. It meant refusing to introduce myself as a guy who got burned by someone. I could carry the offense or I could carry the lesson, but I couldn't carry both. I could carry the offense or I could carry the lesson, but I couldn't carry both. And some of you know exactly what that map feels like. And the next command God gives might be the most important one. Pick up your bed. Jesus tells the man, pick up your bed. And this is where the story gets dangerous, because it was the Sabbath. And carrying your mat on the Sabbath was considered work, which means Jesus didn't just heal him, he made him visible. For 38 years, this man was invisible in the background noise, just another body near the pool. But now he's walking through the city carrying proof of his transformation. And it's controversial. The same mat that once held his weakness now announces his freedom. And the religious leaders didn't celebrate it, they confronted him. Why are you carrying that? Isn't that interesting? When you've been stuck for years, people get used to the way that you were before. But the moment you stand up, the moment you change, the moment you refuse to lie down in your old identity, not everybody claps. Some question it, some resist it, some prefer that you stay paralyzed. Jesus didn't just heal the man privately. He forced him to carry visible evidence that something had changed. And sometimes your obedience will be public, and sometimes your healing will disrupt expectations. Sometimes picking up your mat means carrying the very thing people used to associate with you and your weakness, but now it's your testimony. Sometimes the thing you think disqualifies you is actually the thing that God will use. That thing that you feel like is a dysfunction is actually the function and the gift and the strength that God will use in your life. Later, Jesus finds the man again and he says, see, you have been made well, sin no more. Notice something important here, friend. The healing came before the correction. Jesus meets us in our mess, but he refuses to leave us there. So let me ask you the same question Jesus asked that man. Do you want to be made well? Not just encouraged, not just inspired, not distracted, not temporarily motivated, but made well, made whole. But here's the real question. What are you going to do when he tells you to stand? What are you going to do when obedience feels uncomfortable and inconvenient? When forgiveness feels unfair? When growth feels unfamiliar? Because wanting healing is one thing. Actually stepping into it and standing up is another. And if you're tired of waiting, this is your moment. Not when the water stirs, not when the conditions improve, now. If you want to change, then change. If you're choosing to stand, even when your legs feel shaky, type this in the comments. I'm getting up. I'm picking up my bed. And if you know that it's time to stop rehearsing the excuses, type in the comment section, no more excuses. Because breakthrough doesn't begin when circumstances change. It begins when identity shifts. Now get up and walk. Get up and walk. And as always, friend, I love you and I'm praying for you. And I can't wait to see you in this next